This video is about graphing lines in slope-intercept form and writing the equation of a line in slope-intercept form from a table and a graph. So you've probably noticed that all of our equations have been in the form y equals mx plus b for quite some time. This is called slope-intercept form because it contains both our slope and the y-intercept. The letter m represents the slope, and the letter b, the lowercase b, represents the y-intercept. It's only the y-coordinate of the y-intercept, as you remember from before. So how do the different values of m affect the graph of y equals mx plus b? So remember, if m is a positive number, that the graph of our line is going to rise. If m is negative, our line is going to fall. When m is larger than 1, so 2, 3, -2, -3, the graph of the line is going to be steeper than the graph of the y equals x line, because this would only have a slope of 1. If m is between 0 and 1, the graph of the line is less steep or flatter than the graph of the y equals x. So if m equals -5, the graph is blank, then the graph of y equals -2. So we're going to ignore the negatives for now, and we're just going to look at 5 and 2. And in this case, 5 would be a greater number because the negative just means the line's going down. So 5 is the greater number, which means that this would be a steeper line than the y equals -2x. If m is -1, then the graph is going to be less steep than y equals -3, because -3, if we take the absolute value, that's a larger number, so it would be a steeper line. It's going to be changing at a faster rate. So using the equations, answer problems 1 through 4, justify your reasoning using complete sentences. So which of the following equations is the steepest? Well, of our slopes, we have a slope that is 1/7, we have a slope that is 5, a slope that is -8, and a slope that is -3/4. So if we're looking at number, we're going to ignore the sign when we're looking at steepness, which means that this equation y equals -8x minus 2 is the steepest because it's the largest slope. So which of the above equations is the flattest? Well, in this case, that would be the 1/7 equation because that's the smallest slope. So y equals 1/7 x minus 3 is the flattest or least steep line because it is the smallest slope. So which of the following equations have positive slopes? Well, the positive slopes would be b and a. And which of the following have negative slopes? So negative slopes would have the negative sign, which in this case then would be c and d. So how do we write the equation if we're given information into slope-intercept form? So remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So in the first one, a slope of 3 and a starting point of -3, we would have y equals 3x minus 3. In b, or in number 6, a rate of change is 5/7 and the y-intercept is 0. So we'd have y equals 5/7x plus 0. Now, if we just have a 0, we don't really need that there. So we can just have the equation y equals 5/7x. Number 7, we have a rate of -5/8 and a y-intercept of 1/5. So we would have the slope y equals -5/8x because our rate goes in front of the x plus 1/5 because sometimes our y-intercept might be a fraction. In number 8, we have a slope of 0 and a y-intercept of 15. So we have y equals 0x plus 15. Remember that 0 times x is just 0. So we're left with y equals 15. Use the table of values to find the slope, the y-intercept. Use this information to write the function rule. So I'm just going to look at any 2 points in the table. So in this case, let's look at the first two. So to get to from 7 to 12, I'm adding 5. To get from -3 to 0, I'm adding 3. Remember that your slope is the change in y over the change in x. So we have 5 over 3. The y-intercept is the point where x is 0. So in this case, we have 0, 12, which means that the equation would be y equals 5/3 x plus 12. In number 10, when I look at the equation, the first 2 points, to get from -1 to -9, I'm subtracting 8. And to get from -2 to 1, I'm adding 1, which means my slope is -8 over 1, or -8. The y-intercept again is where x is 0, so 0, -17. So my equation would be y equals -8x minus 17. So given the graph, find the slope, the y-intercept, and write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. So in number 11, our slope is going to be positive because the line is rising. So when I look at my slope, I want to figure out how much should I go up, and then how much should I go over. So I went up 2, and I went over 8. So my slope would be 2 over 8, which reduces to 1/4. Now when I look for my y-intercept, remember it's where I'm crossing the y-axis. So in this case, I'm crossing the y-axis at 0, 3. So my equation would be y equals 1/4 x plus 3. Number 12, when I look at my slope, I want to figure out how do I get from one point to the other. This time my line is going down, so I'm going to have a negative slope. So I went down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I went over 2. So my slope is -6 over 2, which reduces to -3. My y-intercept again is where I cross the y-axis, so 0, -4. So y equals -3x minus 4. Number 13, remember that any horizontal line always has a slope of 0, and my y-intercept is 0, 5. So my equation would be y equals 0x plus 5. Remember, 0 times x is just 0, so my equation is y equals 5. So how do I now graph these equations instead of just using a table like we did in the past unit? So when I look at my equation, I know that my slope is 3, or I can write that as 3 over 1, and my y-intercept is 0, -5. So when I go to graph these equations using slope-intercept form, I'm going to start my graph at the y-intercept. So I'm going to go to 0, -5 and place a dot. Then I'm going to look at my slope. Remember how when we count slope, we go up for positive numbers and down for negative numbers. So if my slope is 3 over 1, I want to go up 3 and right 1. So from this y-intercept, I'm going to count up 3 spaces, right 1, place a dot. I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to count up 3 spaces, right 1, place a dot. And then I'm going to connect these dots to draw a line. So you really only need 2 dots to make a line, but to make our line look a little bit more extended and to practice using slope, we're going to use 3 lines for all of our, or 3 dots for all of our lines. So number 13, my slope is -2 over 3. My y-intercept is the number by itself, so 0, 6. So I'm going to go to 0, 6 on the y-axis. This time my slope is negative, so I'm going to say -2, which means I go down. And then remember, I always move to the right for that second number. So I'm going to go down to right 3, down to right 3, and then I can connect those dots to make my line. Now in 15 or in 16, it's not in function form yet. So the y is not by itself. So first I need to get the y by itself. So I'm going to add 5x to both sides. And we get that y equals 5x minus 7. So based on that equation, that means I'm going to have a slope of 5, or I can write that as 5 over 1, and a y-intercept of 0, -7. So on my graph, I'm going to go to -7, place a dot. When I look at my slope, 5 over 1, that means I'm going to go up 5 and right 1. So I'm going to go up 5 from -7, right 1, up 5 graph lines, right 1, and then I can connect my dots. In number 17, there's a number in front of the y, so I'm going to divide everything by 7 first and reduce that so I get y equals 3 over 7x plus 4, which means in this case that my slope is 3 over 7 and my slope is 0, 4. So I'm going to start at 0, 4 on the y-axis. I'm going to go up 3 and right 7. Now, I can't fit another dot, so in this case I can just connect them. If I want to, I could go the other direction from my y-intercept to make that third dot. So I could go down 3 and left 7. This is the only way that you should be moving left, is if you're using the complete opposite of the slope you used moving the correct way. So now I have 3 dots, and I'm going to connect those lines. So remember, if your lines only can fit 2 dots, that's fine, but if you wanted to add the third dot, you can use the complete opposite of the slope. Number 18. I need to solve for y, so first I'm going to add 3x to both sides. 9y equals 3x plus 36. I'm going to divide everything by 9. Y equals 1/3 x plus 4. So in this case, my slope is 1/3, and my y-intercept is 0, 4. So I'm going to go to 0, 4 on the y-axis, place a dot, and then my slope is positive, so I'm going to go up 1 and right 3. I'm going to do that twice. And then I can use those dots to connect and draw my line. Make sure that all of your lines have arrows added onto each end of them when you are done connecting your dots.